The contract is void. 3 words that would change everything. 3 words I never thought I'd say. But standing in that sterile hospital room, staring at the sleeping infant in the bassinet, I knew I couldn't hand her over. Not to them. Not after what I'd found. My name is Grace Hartley, and 6 months ago, I made what I thought was the noblest decision of my life. I agreed to be a surrogate mother for Derek and Natalie Brennan, a wealthy couple from Connecticut, who seemingly had everything except the one thing they wanted most: a child. The money was life-changing. $80,000. Enough to pay off my student loans, help my sister with her medical bills, and finally give me a cushion to pursue my dream of opening a small bakery. I was 26, healthy, and according to the agency, an ideal candidate. I remember the first meeting vividly. We sat in their lawyer's office, a place with mahogany walls and leather chairs that probably cost more than my car. Natalie was stunning, blonde hair pulled back in a perfect chignon, designer clothes, a smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. Derek was handsome in that corporate way, with steel grey eyes and an expensive watch that caught the light every time he moved. "We're so grateful you're considering this," Natalie said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Her fingers were cold. "We've wanted a baby for so long. You have no idea what this means to us." Derek nodded, his expression serious. "We'll take care of everything, Grace. All medical expenses, of course, plus a generous living allowance during the pregnancy. You won't have to worry about a thing." I should have noticed the way he said it, the way his jaw tightened slightly, the way Natalie's grip on my hand was just a bit too firm, but I didn't. I was too busy imagining what $80,000 could do for my life. The insemination was clinical, performed at a top fertility clinic in Hartford. The doctors were professional, the facility immaculate. Everything felt safe and legitimate. Within 3 weeks, I was pregnant. Those first few months were surprisingly pleasant. Natalie called me weekly, asking about my symptoms, sending care packages with prenatal vitamins and organic teas. Derek handled all the paperwork, ensuring every medical bill was paid immediately. They seemed like the perfect parents to be. I moved into a small apartment they'd arranged for me, closer to their home in Westport so I'd be nearby for checkups. My best friend, Tessa, thought the whole thing was odd. "Grace, you're carrying a stranger's baby," she said one afternoon while helping me unpack. "Doesn't that freak you out even a little?" I shrugged, folding a maternity shirt. "They're not strangers anymore, and it's just 9 months. I'm helping them build a family." "Yeah, but what if you get attached?" "I won't," I said firmly. "This isn't my baby." "It's theirs." How naive I was. Everything changed during my 5th month. I'd gone to their house for a dinner they'd insisted on hosting. It was a massive estate, the kind you see in magazines, with a circular driveway and columns framing the entrance. Inside, everything was white and pristine. White marble floors, white furniture, white walls adorned with expensive abstract art. "Make yourself comfortable," Natalie said, gesturing to the living room. "Derek's just finishing up a call. Would you like some water, juice?" "Water's fine, thank you." She disappeared into the kitchen, and I wandered around the room, admiring the space. That's when I noticed the door. It was partially hidden behind a tall plant, slightly ajar. Through the crack, I could see stairs leading down. Curiosity got the better of me. I glanced toward the kitchen, heard Natalie humming softly, and moved closer to the door. The stairs were carpeted, muffling my footsteps as I descended into what appeared to be a basement. It wasn't what I expected. The basement was finished, but it wasn't a typical rec room or home theater. The walls were lined with filing cabinets. In the center of the room sat a large desk with a computer, its screen glowing in the dim light, and covering one entire wall was a corkboard filled with photographs. My breath caught in my throat. The photographs were of children, dozens of them. Different ages, different backgrounds. Each photo had a name written beneath it in neat handwriting, along with dates and what looked like reference numbers. I moved closer, my heart pounding. Some of the photos had red X marks through them. Others had notes attached. Unsuitable, medical issues, wrong coloring. "What are you doing down here?" I spun around. Derek stood at the bottom of the stairs, his expression unreadable. The warm, charming man from our meetings was gone. In his place was someone cold and calculating. "I'm sorry, the door was open and You shouldn't be down here." His voice was quiet but carried an edge that made my skin crawl. "This is private." "Derek, what are all these photos? Who are these children?" He moved past me to the computer, closing several windows I hadn't even noticed were open. "Previous surrogacy attempts. We've been trying for a while, as you know. It's important to keep records." "But why the X marks? And these notes?" "Grace." He turned to face me fully, and something in his eyes made me take a step back. "You need to understand something. Natalie and I have very specific requirements for our child. We've invested a lot of time and money into this process. What you saw is simply documentation." "Documentation of what?" "Of our search for the perfect candidate, the perfect genes, the perfect surrogate." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You should feel honored. You're the one who met all our criteria." A chill ran down my spine. "What happens to the ones who don't meet your criteria?" "That's not your concern. Now let's go back upstairs. Natalie's probably wondering where we are." He guided me toward the stairs with a hand on my lower back, and I felt like a prisoner being escorted to a cell. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Dinner was awkward. I could barely eat, pushing pasta around my plate, while Natalie chatted about nursery themes and baby names. Derek watched me carefully, and every time our eyes met, I felt that same unsettling sensation. "Are you feeling all right?" Natalie asked, concern creasing her perfect features. "You've barely touched your food." "Just a little tired," I managed. "The baby's been active today." "Oh, how wonderful." She clapped her hands together. "Derek, did you hear that? Our baby's active." Our baby. The words echoed in my head with new, sinister meaning. I left shortly after, claiming exhaustion. In my car, I sat for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. What had I stumbled into? Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the images from that basement. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe it was just documentation. But the red X marks, the clinical notes about unsuitable children, the sheer number of photographs, it all felt wrong. I called Tessa. "You need to look into this," she said immediately after I told her everything. "Grace, this sounds really messed up." "But what if I'm overreacting? What if it's exactly what Derek said?" "Then you'll have peace of mind, but if it's not..." She paused. "Look, I have a friend who's a private investigator. Let me give you his number. Just talk to him." The private investigator's name was Malcolm Reed, a stocky man in his 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. We met at a coffee shop in New Haven, far enough from Westport that I wouldn't risk running into the Brennans. "Tell me everything," Malcolm said, pulling out a notebook. I recounted the basement, the photos, Derek's reaction. Malcolm listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes. "Have you signed anything besides the surrogacy contract?" he asked when I finished. "Just medical consent forms and the contract itself. Why?" "I need you to get me a copy of that contract, and any other paperwork they've given you." I handed him a folder I'd brought. "I have everything here." He spent several minutes reviewing the documents, his frown deepening with each page. Finally, he looked up. "Grace, There are some unusual clauses in here. This section about genetic testing and medical interventions, it gives them an extraordinary amount of control over the pregnancy, more than standard surrogacy contracts. What kind of control? Authority to make medical decisions without your input, requirements for specific dietary restrictions and supplements, mandatory weekly monitoring. And this, he tapped a paragraph near the end. A clause stating that if the child is born with any undesirable characteristics, they reserve the right to refuse custody, but you would be obligated to find alternative placement at your own expense. My stomach dropped. What does that mean, undesirable characteristics? That's the thing, it's not defined, which means they could reject the baby for any reason and leave you holding the responsibility. I felt sick. Can they do that? Is that legal? It's morally reprehensible, but whether it's legally enforceable is debatable. The bigger question is why they'd include such a clause. Malcolm leaned forward. Grace, I think you need to be very careful here. Let me do some digging into Derek and Natalie Brennan. Don't do anything yet. Just keep up appearances while I investigate. The next 2 weeks were torture. I continued my weekly appointments, smiled when Natalie sent care packages, and pretended everything was normal. But I was hyper-aware of every interaction, every word they said. Malcolm called on a Thursday evening. We need to meet, now. His tone made my blood run cold. We met at the same coffee shop, and this time, Malcolm had a thick file with him. Grace, the Brennans aren't who they claim to be. He opened the file, spreading documents across the table. Their real names are Derek and Natalie Brennan, that part's true. But they've been involved in multiple surrogacy arrangements over the past 8 years. I tracked down 4 different women who carried babies for them. 4? What happened to those babies? Malcolm's expression was grim. That's where it gets dark. 2 of the women reported that the Brennans rejected the babies shortly after birth, claiming genetic defects that subsequent medical examinations couldn't confirm. The babies were placed in foster care. One woman said the Brennans took the baby, but she later saw an adoption listing that matched the child's description. The 4th woman disappeared before giving birth. I felt dizzy. Disappeared? Vanished. No trace. The police investigated but found nothing. Her family hasn't heard from her in 6 years. Oh, God! I pressed my hands to my stomach, feeling the baby kick. What are they doing? Why would they? I think they're trafficking babies, Malcolm said quietly. Using surrogates to produce children, then selling them to buyers. The genetic testing, the specific requirements, they're custom ordering babies based on what their clients want. When a baby doesn't meet specifications or isn't needed, they abandon it. The room spun. I'm carrying a baby they're planning to sell? Possibly, or they already have a buyer lined up, someone who wanted your specific genetic profile combined with their selected sperm donor. The father, Derek, said he was the biological father. Malcolm shook his head. I doubt it. More likely they used a sperm donor chosen to produce specific traits. Eye color, height, intelligence markers. They're treating this like breeding livestock. I couldn't breathe. The baby inside me, the life I'd been nurturing, was part of some sick operation. What do I do? First, you need to get somewhere safe. Don't go back to that apartment. They own it, which means they could have access. Do you have family or friends who can take you in? My sister, Rachel, she lives in Maine. Good. Pack what you can tonight and leave first thing in the morning. Don't tell the Brennans anything. I'm going to contact the FBI. This crosses state lines, involves human trafficking. They'll want to talk to you. That night, I threw clothes and essentials into 2 suitcases, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip them closed. Every sound made me jump. Every car that passed outside made me think the Brennans had somehow found out. At 3 in the morning, my phone rang. Natalie's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it, frozen. Should I answer? Pretend everything was normal? It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. A minute later, a text appeared. "Grace, I hope you're all right. I had a dream that something was wrong with the baby. Please call me when you wake up." My mouth went dry. Was she actually concerned? Or was this something else? Another text arrived. "Derek thinks we should increase the monitoring appointments. Starting tomorrow, we'd like you to come in every other day instead of weekly. Just to be safe." They were tightening their control. Malcolm had warned me they might sense something was off. I texted back, "Sorry, phone was on silent. Baby and I are fine. I can do the extra appointments. What time tomorrow?" Her response was immediate. 9 a.m. at the clinic. We'll meet you there. I had to be gone before 9. I barely slept. At 5:30, I loaded my car and drove north, watching the rearview mirror obsessively for any sign of being followed. I called Rachel from the road. "Grace, it's not even 6. What's wrong?" "Rach, I need your help. I'm in trouble, and I'm coming to stay with you. I'll explain everything when I get there, but please, just trust me." "Of course. Drive safely. I'll have the guest room ready." The 6-hour drive felt like an eternity. Every mile I put between myself and Westport, I felt marginally safer, but I also felt the weight of what I was carrying, not just a baby, but evidence of something terrible. Rachel lived in a small coastal town in Maine, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Her house was a modest Cape Cod with weathered blue shutters and a garden full of wildflowers. When I pulled into the driveway, she was already on the porch. "Grace," she hurried down the steps and wrapped me in a hug. "You look exhausted. Come inside." Over coffee at her kitchen table, I told her everything. Rachel listened with growing horror, her hand covering her mouth. "I knew something felt off about this arrangement," she said when I finished. "I never said anything because you seemed so sure. But Grace, this is nightmare material." "I don't know what to do. Malcolm said the FBI would get involved, but that could take time. And in 4 weeks I'm due. What if they come for the baby?" "Then we make sure they can't find you. You'll stay here. We'll tell people you're my cousin visiting from out west. Small town, everyone minds their own business mostly, and we'll figure out the birth plan, maybe a home birth with a midwife, someone discreet." I felt tears welling up. "Rach, I think I want to keep her." "Her?" "I found out at the last ultrasound. A girl. The Brennans don't know yet. I didn't tell them." I pressed my hand to my belly. "She's not theirs. They don't deserve her, and I can't let her end up in their sick operation or abandoned in foster care because she's not the right product." Rachel reached across the table and gripped my hand. "Then we fight for her, whatever it takes." My phone buzzed. Natalie. "Grace, you missed your appointment. Where are you? We're worried." And then Derek. "Grace, call me immediately. This is unacceptable. You're in breach of contract." "They know," I whispered, showing Rachel the messages. She grabbed my phone and powered it off. "We're getting you a new number, today, and Malcolm needs to know what's happening." Over the next week, things escalated. Malcolm informed me the FBI had opened an investigation, but they needed more evidence before they could make arrests. The women he'd tracked down were terrified to testify, afraid of retaliation. The missing woman's case had gone cold. Without concrete proof of baby trafficking, the Brennans could claim everything was a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, my old phone, which Rachel had kept powered off, filled with increasingly aggressive messages. The Brennans threatened legal action, demanded I return to Connecticut, insisted I was endangering the baby by fleeing medical care. Then the threats turned darker. "You have no idea what you've done, Grace. That baby belongs to us. We will find you. You signed a contract. You're carrying our property. There are consequences for theft. Malcolm advised me to document everything but not respond. They're digging their own grave, he said. Keep those messages. They're evidence. At 36 weeks, I started having contractions. False labor, the midwife Rachel found said, but a reminder that time was running out. What happens when she's born? I asked Rachel one night. Even if the FBI builds a case, the Brennans could still try to claim parental rights. The contract is void the moment they threatened you, Rachel said firmly. And once that baby's born, you're her mother in every way that matters. We'll get you a good lawyer. We'll fight this. But I was terrified. Every car that drove slowly past the house made me panic. Every stranger in town looked suspicious. I couldn't shake the feeling that the Brennans were closing in. At 38 weeks, Malcolm called with news. The FBI raided their house this morning. They found the basement office. Grace, it was worse than we thought. Detailed records of 23 surrogacy arrangements, communications with buyers, financial transactions. They've arrested both Derek and Natalie. I started crying, relief flooding through me. It's over? For them, yes. They're facing federal trafficking charges. But Grace, we found something else. A file on you. They'd already been paid for your baby. $300,000 from a couple in California. Delivery date was supposed to be next week. I felt ill. Someone had bought my daughter before she was even born. The buyers have been notified that the arrangement is void. They're not happy, but legally they have no claim. The baby is yours. 2 weeks later, I went into labor. Rachel drove me to a small hospital, one town over, where a sympathetic doctor who'd been briefed on the situation admitted me under a false name for safety. 14 hours of labor. At 6:42 a.m. on a Thursday morning, I held my daughter for the first time. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, dark hair, eyes that would probably change color but for now looked gray. She didn't cry much, just gazed up at me with an expression of absolute trust. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm your mama, and I promise I'll never let anyone hurt you." Rachel stood beside the bed, crying too. "She's beautiful, Grace. What are you going to name her?" I'd thought about it for weeks. Hope. Her name is Hope. The months that followed were a blur of legal proceedings. With Malcolm's evidence and my testimony, the case against the Brennans was airtight. Derek and Natalie both pled guilty to human trafficking, conspiracy, and fraud. They were sentenced to 20 years each. The other surrogates came forward once they realized it was safe. Some of the children were located and reunited with birth mothers who wanted them. Others had been adopted into loving homes where they'd stay. The missing woman's fate remained a mystery, though the FBI suspected the Brennans knew more than they admitted. I filed to terminate the surrogacy contract and establish sole parental rights to Hope. The Brennans' lawyer tried to fight it, but given their convictions, the judge ruled in my favor without hesitation. A year later, I was sitting in my own apartment in Portland, Maine, small but cozy, with a view of the water. Hope was napping in her crib, and I was testing recipes for the bakery I was planning to open. Tessa visited that weekend, bringing gifts for Hope and a housewarming plant for me. "Look at you," she said, watching me pipe frosting onto cupcakes while Hope gurgled happily in a bouncer. "You're thriving." "We both are." I glanced at my daughter, my heart swelling. "It's not the life I planned, but it's the one we needed." "Do you ever regret it? The surrogacy, I mean?" I thought about it carefully. I regret getting involved with the Brennans. I regret not seeing the warning signs sooner. But regret Hope? I shook my head. Never. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though she was supposed to be someone else's baby? She was never supposed to be theirs, I said firmly. Some part of me knew that from the moment I saw that basement. Maybe that's why I couldn't walk away, why I had to protect her. Tessa smiled. You're a good mum, Grace. I'm trying. That evening, after Tessa left, I rocked Hope in the nursery, humming softly. She'd grown so much already, her features becoming more defined, her personality emerging. She was strong and curious and loved to laugh. My phone buzzed with an email. Malcolm, thought you'd want to know. They found Jennifer Marsh, the missing surrogate from 6 years ago. She's alive, living under a new identity in Oregon. Turns out she figured out what the Brennans were doing and ran before giving birth. She kept the baby. Both are doing well. She says to tell you thank you for being brave enough to come forward. Because of you, she doesn't have to hide anymore. I read the message 3 times, tears blurring the words. Another woman, another baby, both safe. We did it, Hope, I whispered. We stopped them. Hope yawned and snuggled against my chest, her tiny hand fisting in my shirt. And in that moment, holding my daughter, knowing she was truly mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The contract was void, the nightmare was over, and our life together was just beginning.